John Pemberton was a Columbus, Georgia pharmacist and a Confederate Army veteran. A key point in his Army service was a painful sword wound that led to a morphine addiction. Why was that important? Pemberton experimented with painkillers, many based on alcohol and cocaine. Probably not the best way to end his addiction. Pemberton graduated with a medical degree from the Reformed Medical College with an interest in chemistry. He opened a drugstore in the 1850s. After the Civil War, he started experimenting with painkillers, including cocaine, coca wines, and cola nuts. He called the resulting syrup formula Pemberton's French wine cola, which he mixed with carbonated water. Some of his work was done at a drugstore in Atlanta where he sold most of his concoction. Because of temperance legislation in Georgia, a non alcoholic version was needed. Pemberton decided that this version should be sold as a fountain drink rather than medicine. Advertising guy Frank Robinson came up with a catchy name, Coca Cola, which incorporated the two main ingredients while excluding sugar. Just about every key invention has been patented to claim monopoly rights. Pemberton did not bother. Instead, the idea was to keep it a secret. Because there were so many pharmacists and others attempting to make soft drinks, patent protection would have been limited, and Pemberton probably would have spent a great deal of time and money in court. Plus, patent protection generally lasts only 20 years. The secret formula proved to be a great idea, now kept in a vault at the World of Coca-Cola in Atlanta. The manufactured syrup was first sold at the Jacobs Pharmacy in Atlanta in May 1886, with 25 gallons sold the first year, then sales increased each year. Shortly before he died, Pemberton sold the formula to a partnership of Asa Candler, another Atlanta pharmacist, Robinson, and others. Candler later bought out his partners. The formula would be quietly changed to exclude the small amount of cocaine after the federal government passed the Pure Food and Drug Act. Yale chemist Benjamin Stillman was one of the first to open a soda fountain in the United States in 1806. Coke sold the syrup in bulk, mainly to soda fountains. Coke typically sold for 5 cents, with the claim of being a miracle drug curing headaches, ulcers, impotence, and more. Advertising was key, and the Coke folk were great at it. It started with the great national temperance beverage in 1906, then expanded exponentially as sales grew. In 1917, it was 3 million a day. That became a billion a day in 1997. There was Refresh Yourself, the pause that refreshes. Where there's Coke, there's hospitality, and it's a real thing. Coke was not the first to use Santa, but came up with the modern image. It started with St. Nicholas on stained glass windows. Cartoonist Thomas Nast came up with an updated version of Santa for Harper's Weekly beginning in the 1860s. It was Coke that came up with the red suit and the indelible image beginning in 1931. Coca-Cola introduced polar bears in the 1990s, but I was not a fan. Buying Coca-Cola at the soda fountain was one thing, but people wanted to take it home. How would that happen? Bottling goes back to the 17th century, so the practice was common. The challenge was to keep the bubbles in the bottle. Hundreds of patents were filed for various caps, corks, and other lids, and glass blowing machines to make the perfect pop bottle. Candler began bottling Coke directly and through franchises before the start of the 20th century. The ownership characteristics of bottling companies can dramatically change the accounting practices. A 50-50 joint venture means using what's called the equity method. Less than 50% ownership also means the equity method. I call that earnings magic because it hides key details, which are presented in the notes but not on the balance sheet. Anyway, Coke became a big user of joint ventures with Coke bottlers literally around the world. Coca-Cola is a blue chip investment, one that made a small original investor rich. The Dow Jones Industrial Average measures stock price performance based on 30 of the bluest of the blue chip companies, and Coke is part of the Dow. As of mid 2024, Coke was valued at $274 billion, paying a dividend of over 3%. Not bad for sugar water. Coke is not the only soda or even the only cola. The big rivalry was with Pepsi Cola, which was invented just a few years after Coke. Plus, Dr. Pepper, actually created before Coca-Cola. The Cola Wars next time on Food History and Mystery.